I'm going to share with you the 5 things that every great game has and what the games that don't do so well are lacking. I can tell you it's not your hook, it's not your story, it's not your gameplay loop, it's not your art. So what is it? The first one is tension. The players need to have something pushing back at them. They need to feel some resistance, some timer, something that is making a challenge for them. So some basic examples are puzzles, time, resource management, or even the movement of the game. So throughout this, I'm going to use 2 real-world examples, a AAA title, Resident Evil 2 Remake, and an indie title, Thronefall. This is to show you and put into perspective what actually these terms mean. So for example, for Resident Evil 2, for tension, there's limited ammo, there's backtracking, there's difficult enemies, advancing enemies. These are just a few examples of the tension in that game. And for Thronefall, there's placing units, managing resources, managing gold, choosing the right abilities and the right perks. So when you're developing your game, ask yourself the simple question for tension. What is the player struggling against? So the second fundamental is agency. Is the player in control? Do their actions actually matter throughout the game? When they jump, do they actually decide how far, how high they jump? Now don't get this confused with real world or scenario picking. By agency, by the player actions actually matter, it doesn't mean you make a choice and something happens throughout the game. It can be as simple as jumping over a gap, like in Mario, and you not pressing the jump button long enough or not moving to the right long enough and not making the jump. It doesn't have to be like Mass Effect where you make a decision and it affects something down the line. That's not exactly what agency is. It's the player making choices, making controls, making commands using whatever input they're using and something reacting on the other side. An example of opposite of agency would be jumping a gap and you always landing on the other side because of some trigger event or something pulling you to the other side and you never fall in the hole. So for Resident Evil 2, a perfect example of agency is choosing which corridors to go down, what zombies to attack, what zombies to avoid because ammo is scarce, what paths to take, what doors to unlock. These are all choices that the player gets to make and they don't have to do every single one in any particular order. In Thronefall, the player gets to decide when to upgrade towers, when to upgrade buildings, where to place units. This directly affects how the night will go and if they will win or lose that night. So in developing your game and you're focusing on agency, ask yourself the simple question: does the player's actions actually matter? The third point is clarity. Does the player understand what to do? Good games make goals, tools, and feedback obvious. Now, clarity does not always equal simplicity. Some of the most complex games out there are still very clear in how you do actions, how you go through the tutorial, how you solve puzzles, but the best games do it in a way that's not too complex, not too much in the player's face, but still clear and obvious on what to do. So for Resident Evil 2, the clarity is in the UI, the HUD, the paths you take and the layout of the levels, and say the visual cues for damage. You know when you're getting hurt and how affected you are or how damaged you are in the game based on how your player is moving. For Thronefall, you always know how much cost each building or upgrade is, where the enemies are coming at you from on the map, and where your units are, what type of unit is on the map and where they are located. So in focusing on clarity, ask yourself, can a new player understand my game without guessing? The fourth fundamental is progression. The player or the game needs to feel like it's evolving. This can be unlocks, leveling up, new areas in the map, new upgrades. Something needs to show progression. So for Resident Evil 2 example, they do this by unlocking new weapons, unlocking new areas. You have to backtrack a lot. You have to unlock doors you couldn't unlock before. You have to go certain ways you couldn't unlock. The story of the game affects the map and the layout based on enemies, or sometimes paths are blocked. That's how you show progression. In Thronefall, every night the enemies get a little more difficult You have to focus on where to upgrade or what to upgrade, where to place your units, what perks to pick, what abilities to pick. You have to unlock new perks and new abilities as you progress through the game and level up your character overall. When focusing on progression, ask yourself, how does the player or game change over time? So in the fifth and final fundamental is resolution. Is the player rewarded? Do they unlock a new ability? Do they unlock a new weapon? Are they even rewarded with a certain sound cue or visual cue? It doesn't have to be a major resolution. It can be something small, like as simple as opening up a chest, hearing a sound cue, and getting a new item. It doesn't have to be something major. This is where the player gets satisfaction, when they do something and they get rewarded. Without this, it gets boring. They feel like they're not making any progress. They feel like the game is kind of pointless. So for example, in Resident Evil 2, there's multiple forms of resolution. There's finding the next typewriter, defeating a new boss, having a downtime after a major battle, unlocking new rooms or solving new puzzles and being rewarded with a new ability or a new weapon or a new area to search or more ammo. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a major resolution. It can be simple as sound cues or visuals. Thronefall does this perfectly when it comes to the end of each night. When you're done, after upgrading your economy every night or every day, you get a collection of gold, and every day, if you keep upgrading your economy, you get more and more gold flooded to you at the end of the night, at the beginning of the next morning. And it's a great feeling seeing more and more coins flood to your character, knowing you're going to be able to upgrade your towers, your buildings that much more. So when focusing on resolution, ask yourself, what makes this satisfying to finish or even just playing? So now these 5 fundamentals won't guarantee your game is successful, but if you follow them, it will drastically increase your odds of making a good and fun game. And every single game that has been successful out there, that is truly a game and not just some simulation pretending to be a game, every real game with real gameplay that has been successful has followed every single one of these fundamentals. They did not skip any. They include all of them. And these fundamentals are not only valid on a macro level, on a beginning to end of the game, they're also valid on a micro level, every stage of the game. You should be applying these to every stage of your game. Every minor encounter, every minor section of the level, everything you go through, every chest you open, every door you unlock, they can all be applied for tension, resolution, clarity, does the player understand, progression, everything on the macro for the whole game and on the micro for each section of the game. Let's recap really quickly on what the 5 fundamentals of every great game is, and if you follow them, you'll drastically increase your chance of making a great game. First one is tension. What is pushing back at your player? The second one is agency. Does your player feel like they're in control? The third one is clarity. Does the player understand what to do at all times? The fourth one is progression. Is the player evolving and feeling like what they're doing is worth it? And resolution. Does the player get rewarded after performing actions? Before we wrap this up, if you want to learn game dev in the most efficient way possible, supported by a strong community of like-minded developers, focused around fundamentals and true learning and true development and cutting out all the fluff and all the noise and all the unnecessary information that is thrown at you, then you should check out my community, 10th Legion Games. There should be a link in the description, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.